States of America signed by President Donald Trump on July the 4th, 2020 to the new Republic of the United States. First transcribed, well, I'm not going to read all that. Trusting our cause is just and having prayed for the fortitude of brave spiritual wickedness in high places, we citizens of America make this announcement to the shareholders of the U.S. corporation, including the City of London, the British Crown, and the Vatican, and their operatives in the media, government, and society. A second Declaration of Independence by the 50 United States of America, with the utmost respect and admiration for the founders of America and the framers of the original Declaration of Independence, the American people humbly emulate their thoughtful, measured response to certain perpetual and ascending tyranny and despotism. We too believe it is a moral obligation of those privileged with knowledge and opportunity to work on behalf of the people, that the people are served best when their benefactors choose unity over division, nationalism over globalism, sovereignty over submission, and liberty over oppression. That all human beings are equal in their innate value, that America was founded under God, and that our God-given rights may not be revoked, suspended, negated, or abridged without due process. What distinguishes the Second Declaration of Independence from its progenitor is the subject from which we seek independence. Regrettably, to our great misfortune, shame, and dismay, and despite the recurrent warnings and accorded safeguards, a cabal of foreign investors and privateers have managed to gain possession of our land, our wealth, our labor, our well-being, our future, and even our children. Although history has become muddied with varied interpretations of cardinal events, including the surreptitious adoption of a second corporate constitution and uncertain ratification of several amendments destructive to the people, it matters only that one or more alien groups lay claim to America and its assets. Rather than speculate on motives and weigh unprofitably to biased accounts, unverifiable information, and plenitous theories and opinions, we engage a perfect solution wherein we exact independence from all claimants, past and present, proclaimed, identified, or veiled. As such, the usurpers named in this declaration are representative and not specific or exhaustive, regardless of supposed ancestry, preceded instrument, or process. Although simply enumerating transgressions and usurpations would suffice to justify the insularity, recounting significant events reveals important facts that are missing from history. These forgotten facts add insight, perspective, and clarity, illuminating our best way forward. Number one, the inevitable Civil War destroyed America's economy, ripped families apart, and cast a questionable shadow on the future of a once promising nation. America was in trouble financially and needed a massive infusion of capital to get back on its feet. A cabal of nation-building venture capitalists from Europe agreed to finance America's recovery, but demanded an active role in government to ensure their investment. In its 1871, mired in debt, Congress worked out a partnership in exchange for boundless financial support. The foreign investors handle America's administrative needs. Got that last sentence, right? Although initially it seemed to be innocuous concession, the consequences of allowing the nation-building venture capitalists to conduct America's business beyond the protections of the U.S. Constitution have proved catastrophic. The investors quickly embedded operations throughout the foreign-owned corporate government and Washington, D.C., and began serving the interests of America's financiers over the people. In 1871, America effectively lost its independence, and the nation-building venture capitalists became our new masters. By the early 1900s, the foreign investors that bankrolled America controlled the major newspapers and news services, enabling them to shape what is reported and how it is to be framed. They had to cover their tracks before being exposed and repudiated by the people. The nation-building venture capitalists worked to soften America's imperturbable, elevated system of government. The founders had formed a constitutional republic instead of a democracy, specifically to prevent citizens in the majority from opposing those in the minority. By doing what is best for their district or state, rather than enforce the majority will, representatives serve all citizens equally, eliminating the noise, division, and violence intrinsic to democracies. Being in control of the narrative, the foreign investors ingeniously promoted the fallacy that America is a democracy, trusting that deception would lead to unrest and chaos that would make America vulnerable, creating additional opportunities for infiltration and manipulation. In 1913, the foreign investors established the Anti-Defamation League to slander anyone who exposed them and their infiltration into American politics. And in 1913, by way of the 16th Amendment, the foreign investors were granted the authority to tax the American people directly, something expressly prohibited by the original Constitution. That the people would willingly subject themselves to forced confiscation of their property, their labor, is illogical, putting the legitimacy of ratification in question. In 1913, by way of the 17th Amendment, the foreign investors breached an important safeguard that protected our constitutional republic from infiltration of enemy forces. Previously, senators were statesmen, appointed by the respective state legislators as a check on the House of Representatives, raiding the public treasury. Henceforth, senators would run as glorified House representatives, reducing to promising free public money and services in exchange for votes. The authenticity of ratification is unlikely because the state legislators would not willingly surrender their authority to bridle the appetite of the people's house. Not would they accede to transfer more power to the federal government, opening yet another door for the international bankers to buy the influence they need to further their grip upon America. In 1913, their foreign investors gained control of our currency by pushing through Congress the Federal Reserve Act, establishing a foreign-owned central banking system despite the dire warnings of Presidents Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, and William McKinley. The Federal Reserve Act passed with the help of compromised legislators between 1:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. on December the 22nd, when most of the members were away on the Christmas holiday. In 1920, Congress, by the way of Independent Treasury Act, turned over the U.S. Treasury Department and its assets, either gold or silver, to the Federal Reserve, the central banking system owned by the foreign investors, established in 1913. In 1921, the Council on Foreign Relations was formed under the cover of advancing America's interests in the world. In fact, the CFR is sponsored by the City of London and serves to advance the interests of the foreign-owned Federal Reserve by direction of the President, Congress, and the narrative through operatives in their news and information networks. In 1925, the owners of the Federal Reserve formed the United States Corporation, and just 5 out of the 100 shares issued were identified, with the balance of the shareholders of the U.S. corporation remaining anonymous. Yet the money hail leads to the City of London, the British Crown, and the Vatican. The tax dollars we send to the Internal Revenue Service go to the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, which are under their control, and not to the United States government. The official formation of U.S. Corp set the stage for the transformation of America from the constitutional republic of the people to a corporation owned by foreign interests and their families. Over the next few years, the individual states were registered as corporations as well, making them franchises of the U.S. corporation. Representatives and senators neither represent nor work for the American people. Rather, they are managers of the U.S. corporation, and as such, they are obligated first to serve its best interests. The president is not just the President of America, he is the CEO of the U.S. corporation. The abbreviated term United States was purposely used to represent both America and the U.S. corporation, to blur the distinction between them. Similarly, the original U.S. Constitution was quietly supplanted by an impostor, a corporate all-capital letter Constitution that bears a similar name and appearance, again to confuse and deceive the American people. Specifically, the Constitution for the United States of America was replaced by the Constitution of the United States of America, in all caps, with the latter's corporate status becoming the supreme law of the land. In 1933, the U.S. federal government declared bankruptcy, and President Roosevelt, as acting CEO, signed over to the U.S. corporation all of America and its assets, including the people and our labor. The bankruptcy of 1933 that was arguably unnecessary and ceremonial in nature and contrived and orchestrated without the consent of the people, completed the heist and the transfer of America and its assets to the same foreign interests who own the U.S. corporation. In the bankruptcy of 1933, the U.S. corporation forced the American people to surrender their gold and trade for debt notes called dollars, fiat currency that has not real value and that is depreciated continually through inflation to where it is worth less than 4 cents today. The bankruptcy of 1933 put the U.S. corporation in a state of emergency, allowing it to implement Admiralty law, made evident by the gold fringe around the American flag. When in a U.S. corporate courtroom, you are considered as C and not a citizen of America. In 1936, U.S. corporation began issuing Social Security numbers to turn otherwise sovereign Americans into trustees of corporate fictions, making our labor taxable, which would otherwise be unconstitutional. According to the U.S. corporation, you are not a live man or woman, but rather a representation of a corporation in your name, or a vessel. In 1945, the anonymous owners of the U.S. corporation founded the United Nations under the guise of spreading peace, civility, and humanitarian assistance throughout the world. Yet the true purpose is to condition its citizens to recognize an international authority, a first step in establishing their promised New World Order, in which the U.S. Constitution is retired to make room for a universal totalitarian government. The United Nations publications of Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 revealed a New World Order agenda calling for the end of nationalism, patriotism, private property, individual rights, the two-parent family, automobiles, air travel, and the right to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government. In keeping their goal of sustainable development, they plan to reduce the population by over 90%, ridding America and the world of dissidents and useless eaters. The remaining useful service are to live in coastal communities wherein they will be stacked and packed into micro apartments. Portland, Oregon just issued the first permit for micro apartments. They're a lot smaller than the hotel room I'm staying in right now. The only thing standing in the way of their New World Order is a strong, prosperous, and secure America. To achieve their goal of world domination, America must lose its sovereignty and its leadership position. Thus why the owners of the U.S. corporate quietly work to undermine our culture, systems, beliefs, standards, aspirations, and morals. For over 100 years, they've been employing unrestrained methods and tactics. With millions of dollars at their disposal every year from taxing our labor, this is why President Trump said to quit paying your taxes. It doesn't go to the United States. It goes to a foreign nation. Stop it. Knock it off. Tell the IRS to pound sand. If they come to your door, shoot them. I ain't kidding. With millions of dollars at their disposal every year from taxing our labor, the owners of the U.S. Corp fund leftist nonprofit groups, including the Council on Foreign Relations, that work to subvert our nation and silence anyone in opposition. They integrate the officials and administrators who run the largest charities and organizations, including the AMA, the APA, the CDC, the FCC, the SEC, and the FDA, and they embed operatives in the State Department, the Department of Justice, and the intelligence agencies, both official and covert, including in the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA. In trade for generous grants and endowments, the anonymous owners of the U.S. corporation shade the curriculum and political sentiment of the public schools, colleges, and universities, ensuring that the next generations, our children, harbor disdain for their own country, their history, their culture, their families, and even their ethnicity. The anonymous owners of the U.S. Corp keep the people in the dark about the true history of America, the greatest heist and cover-up in the history, by controlling public education, the major publishers, the news services, the airwaves, and the social and information networks. The foreign owners of the U.S. Corp prop up puppets throughout society and government, allowing them to make millions of dollars in trade for perpetrating their agenda of secrecy and subjugation of America. These traders include prominent politicians, newsreaders, pundits, authors, movie stars, and the heads of social news and information networks, major sports teams, music and entertainment industries, and corporate conglomerates responsible for over 90% of the products designed, manufactured, advertised, purchased, financed, and consumed in America. By the way of funding campaigns and fixing elections, the U.S. owners of the U.S. corporation obligate the most influential politicians to further their agenda of breaking America socially and financially. They promote disdain for our country, dependency on government, indulgence, lawlessness, and immorality to spoil and dishearten citizens, predisposing them to trade their sovereignty for the false promises of an international unelected government sponsored by the world elite. And by God, California has a habit of putting the absolute most criminal women in public office I've ever seen. Like Boxer, Pelosi, and Feinstein, and Waters, and oh my God, I can go on and on and on. I get so pissed reading this. I have to breathe a little here. By the way of the Democrat Party, well, where was I? Okay. By the way of the Democrat Party and operatives posing as television hosts, entertainers, journalists, pundits, policy experts, the owners of the U.S. corporation brainwash and condition the people to accept invalid arguments and pseudoscience that call for globalism, socialism, and a godless society in which technology is our moral compass. The operatives of the foreign-owned U.S. corporation are deeply rooted throughout the news and information networks, academia, government, and society, colloquially referred to as the deep state, the shadow government, or the swamp. The operatives perform with a hive mind because they are guilty of treason, a crime punishable by death. They are desperate to hide their complicity, and thus they systematically target, demonize, and even suicide all who threaten to expose their treachery and their malfeasance. The operatives of the U.S. corporation favor unbridled immigration because it is the most expedient way to destroy the country from within, flooding America with illegal immigrants without allowing them time to assimilate ensures arrogance, separation, and anti-Americanism, and anger, animosity, and conflict with the people by design. We can also expect a steady dilution of the principles, ethics, and systems that made America successful in the first place. Moreover, the majority of illegal immigrants are ethics and systems that made America successful. Moreover, the majority of illegal immigrants are likely to vote for Democrats who legislate according to the will of the foreign owners of the U.S. corporation. Because the free, open, and largely unrestrained internet secures the hidden heist of America and the criminal network that operates in the shadows, the owners of the U.S. corporation, the perpetrators of crime against America and humanity, are rightly concerned about exposure to ensure the people do not wake up, organize, and exact justice. They censor the information we see, ply us with prescription drugs, make us complacent with free money from government, distract us with perpetual video games, and promote one meaningless sporting event after another. In conjunction with skewed statistics, deceptive polls, false facts, and the omission of decisive information, the owners of the U.S. corporation promote anti-Americanism and their New World Order agenda. Fake news keeps the people disoriented, misinformed, and divided over ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and economic class. Meanwhile, their death system enslaves us, their grip ever tightens through surveillance and fluorination, vaccinations, and other technologies are deployed to weaken any substantive opposition. The owners of the U.S. corporation are working incessantly to disarm the millions of law-abiding patriots who stand in the way of their totalitarianism and oppressive New World Order. By the way of orchestrated mass shootings, the owners of the U.S. Corp will continue to terrorize the people until we assent to comprehensive background checks. The word comprehensive is nebulous and undefined, allowing for a battery of psychological and medical testing, ever expanding until targeted individuals are deemed emotionally unstable and a danger to society. True to the predictions of every futuristic book and movie, patriotic Americans will be disarmed by the way of political profiling under the guise of a screening for mental health. Through their vast indoctrination machine, the foreign owners of the U.S. corporation have convinced the people that America is a democracy and that democracy is the highest form of government. This is problematic because democracy is by definition mob rule. Democracies invariably fail because a majority mob always demands more and more public money and services procured through excessive taxation and other socialist-like policies, resulting in economic ruin, runaway debt, fiscal collapse, and ultimately social implosion. opening the door for the promised, predicted, dreadful, and ever-looming New World Order, because sovereignty is not sustainable without exposing the ills of democracy and reestablishing our elevated constitutional republic. We are compelled to make these following proclamations: that the word democracy does not appear anywhere in America's founding documents, because the framers knew that democracy in any form or disguise is fatally flawed, leading invariably to oppression, unrest, societal failure, violence, and death. All modern forms of government are elected democratically. They differentiated only by who makes the decisions after the elections are over. In a democracy, citizens in the majority make the sales, leaving those in the minority oppressed. Consequently, a democracy is always noisy, divisive, divided, insufficient, unsteady, combustible, fiscally irresponsible, and short-lived. America was established as a constitutional republic. Those elected must not do the bidding of the citizen majority, rather they must do what is best for their district. Despite the majority will, in this way, all citizens are represented equally and no one is suppressed, making a constitutional republic quiet, steady, efficient, and preferred. Although the word democracy feels good, it is founded on mob rule, making it akin to socialism, communism, and every other tyrannical form of government. Finally, Article QV, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution resolves any doubt. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. Having exposed the greatest heist and cover-up in history, we're able to summarize: America and its assets were quietly hijacked, and the cover-up has resulted in the unthinkable crimes against the people and humanity. Allowing the hostile takeover to stand will lead eventually to complete and irreversible subjugation and the ratification of truth, justice, and all that is good. This second Declaration of Independence distinguishes the United States of America from the subversive United States Corporation. It asserts that the U.S. corporation was formed illegally, that it is foreign-owned, and that its shareholders have been quietly at war with America for over 150 years. Treasonous operatives embedded within government and the fake news networks purposely divide the citizenry and facilitate conflict among the nations. To hide that the U.S. corporation was formed illegally, that it is foreign-owned, and that its shareholders have been at war. Treasonous operatives embedded within government and the fake news networks purposely divide the citizenry and facilitate this conflict among the natives to hide that the U.S. corporation is, and always has been, the only real enemy of America. This second Declaration of Independence also repudiates with conviction that the U.S. corporate's satanically inspired plan for world governance, in addition to being of, by, and for the elite and not the people, their falsely advertised pseudo-utopian, unelected, totalitarian New World Order would supplant America's sovereignty and extinguish forever any semblance of liberty and prosperity. Because natural inclinations predispose human beings to be short-sighted, malleable, and easily bamboozled, one might presume the American people should bear responsibility for being swindled out of their homeland, inherited from their forefathers, who procured and secured it at great expense and much sacrifice, and for slowly but steadily trading their largely unappreciated blessings of liberty, opportunity, and prosperity for trinkets in the form of unearned comforts, frivolous indulgences, and gluttonous pleasures. However, the transfer of ownership from the American people was not conducted openly and with candor, but clandestinely through calculated design and nefarious means without body consent and unconstitutionally. It is for the latter reason that the American people claim their right to rectification, that the greatest heist in history was effected outside the constraints of the U.S. Constitution, and that those who were elected to represent America's best interests transgressed their fiduciary responsibility and exceeded their authority, warrants this proclamation that the American people are the rightful owners of our land, our labor, our well-being, our future, and our children for our benefit and the benefit for our posterity. As with any negotiated peace after years of atrocities committed by parties at war, we seek neither vengeance nor demand justice for these past transgressions. The simple adjure that the return of what rightfully belongs to the people, and avow firmly, emphatically, publicly, and officially that America shall forever remain a sovereign nation, free, self-directed, and not affiliated or dependent upon any version or variation of the present planned or innovated New World Order. Almost done. We entreat the bloodless solution wherein you cease all destruction activities, including all false flag events, dissolve the U.S. corporation and other illicit legal structures, and each custodial instrument. Return our land and our assets, including our gold and our silver, and redirect the tax collected on our labor back to America. And have your deep state and shadow government operatives retire without drawing your influence in an orderly fashion, so society continues to thrive and trade for you, keeping your wealth, your position, and your heads. In response to questions regarding legitimacy, efficacy, and process, see, you guys, I hope you understood by that last paragraph that I just read the reason Biden is in office. Because it gives them the opportunity to learn to withdraw peacefully, because they're all under sealed indictment. And if they do not withdraw peacefully, their heads will roll. Understand that. That's what's happening right now behind the scenes. Well, we're rebuilding our new government. And I didn't think yesterday he would spend much time on any real new announcements, because they're not quite ready yet. Have patience. Understand it's going on. The rebuilding of our new government in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania is happening right now. Washington, D.C. is emptying, and as those buildings emptying, fences are put around them that are jail cells. Nobody's getting in those buildings. They're not getting back in. Watch what continues to happen. It's going to take a little bit of time. Have patience. Have some excitement in your souls. This is a beautiful time to be alive. It really is. In response to questions regarding legitimacy, efficacy, and process, throwing off the shackles of national thraldom is elementary and unambiguous, as evidenced by the separation of the 13 colonies from Britain in 1776 and the Mexican people from Spain in 1825. A formal declaration hailed by authorized representations procures independence that is immediate, whole, consummate, infrangible, and unencumbered by obligation, condition, or imposition. Understand what that paragraph means. As we enter grievous territory, we reflect on the precarious road our forefathers forged when they judiciously severed the political and familial ties that bound them. Our hearts also are filled with melancholy and trepidation. Yet we too are resolute in our posture and positions from being confronted with no better